Hello everybody, and a very warm welcome to this month's question and answer webinar with me. I'm pleased to see so many of you online. We've got just over 60, so 63 online, which is pretty good for a cold February evening. We have had in the 90s before, but 60 odd is probably a fair average. So thank you all for joining me. Today, for those of you who don't know, who are new to this format, it's simply a question and answer webinar. So what happens every month is we host this webinar, and customers will send us questions and we'll collate them. I don't get to see the questions in advance because I prefer to take them live, and we collate all the answers and we put them into this presentation. Now, as this presentation continues, you can either see it in this small screen like this, or if you want to, you can email me questions live. Now, you'd email me on the email address that I send this invitation to. What will happen live during the webinar is for the first half an hour, I'll go through the pre-submitted questions. So all the questions people have sent over the last month, often they're on similar themes, and the team in the office will group them together. And then after that, very quickly, I'll answer any questions you've emailed during this. So I'll let you know when I'm probably on the last question, and make sure you send all your questions before then, and I'll take those questions at that point. Ask questions about absolutely anything to do with business, be it branding, be it marketing, be it sales, be it business models, be it finance, business, whatever you believe I might be able to help you with. If I can't help you, I'll let you know, but generally speaking, we're pretty good at answering all the questions live on the webinar. So what we will do then is we will look at the first submitted question. The stuff on target markets is complex. Do you need to be that specific? I guess you mean the stuff, you're probably referring to some of our videos that we produce. I imagine if you're referring to those, you're probably making reference to being a new member, and you've received our 5-part new member pack, which talks a lot in target markets. The simple truth is yes. Marketing is often perceived to be quite a glamorous industry. PR is quite a glamorous industry. Branding is quite glamorous. Even sales, whilst it might have a bit of a taboo association to it, it's still quite exciting when you make the sale. But planning marketing becomes quite boring, and it's definitely not glamorous. And I believe a lot of people are put off by that. The idea of going onto a radio advert or a TV advert or doing stuff on social media all sounds quite exciting, but sitting there and planning a target market probably doesn't. However, and this is quite bold of me to say this, but it's probably the most important something you can get right. If you can get that target market right, and you can get your product with your target market correctly aligned, what I call the product niche marriage, so you've got the right target market, the right product for them, and you pitch the pricing right, then everything else you'll do ever in marketing will be incredibly easy. And I choose my words carefully, I do mean easy. So essentially, spend the time investing and looking in that area, and once you're confident in that area and you know what you're doing and you have a clear idea, like I say, about niche, the products and the price, everything else will flow from that. So I know it's boring, but it is foundational work. It's a bit like when you go to the gym and you've got to warm up first and run around. It's very boring, it's not as exciting as doing the proper sport, but you have to do it. So it can be complicated, but it is essential. Okay, the second question says, I can't get my staff to do what I want. I've tried everything. I just feel like shouting and threatening them with the sack now. Okay, I can hear your frustration. Yes, this is a common frustration. A lot of people feel this way. You are not alone, especially if it's a small business, especially if it's a new business, especially if you've only got a few staff. It's not easy at all, so I do empathise with you. I guess what you're really saying is you can't quite get your staff to do what you want. Now, I think there's probably two causes for that. The first one is either your staff don't want to do it, so that's a problem with them, if you will, or it's that they don't understand you, which could be perceived as your problem, if you will, if that's not too rude. So whenever I have these issues with clients, I always advise the first base is to essentially confirm your communication with people. Make sure that they understand what's being asked of them. Now, a technique I've used for many years now is when you're actually giving staff a brief. Tell them what you want, explain it to them, let them ask questions, but then at the end ask them to repeat back the question the brief to you. And it's very interesting. This sounds quite obtuse when you first start doing it. However, it becomes very interesting when it becomes apparent that people don't know what they're doing. You give them a question, or a brief. You give them their instructions, and then they repeat it back to you, and it's something completely different. So first of all, make sure your communication to them is as clear as it possibly can be. On the other side, it's if they don't want to do it. Now, I've learned over the years there's only two reasons people don't want to do stuff. One of them is they don't know how to, and that's a training issue. So you've got to invest in them in training, whether it's in-house or you take a professional training service. The other one is attitude. And if people don't want to do it with attitude, you either need to motivate them and tap into their core motivation a little bit, or you need to get rid of them. And don't be afraid to get rid of people. Obviously, you've got to consult with your HR people, and if they're employed for more than 2 years, it becomes more difficult. But if there's one advice, or one piece of advice I can give you, having managed a lot of employees over years, is don't be afraid to get rid of people. You almost never regret getting rid of people. I don't think I've ever met a business owner that really regrets getting rid of anybody, but they certainly regret keeping people beyond 2 years when it's much more difficult to get rid of them and their performance just decreases and decreases and decreases. That might sound quite stark, and it might kind of sound a little bit too bold, as if I'm kind of anti the poor oppressed worker, but to some extent your business is not a charity, and you have to invest in the business, and you have to invest in your people, and you have to give them a fair opportunity. You're going to explain tasks to them, you're going to give them a clear brief, you're going to help them, you're going to train them, but they've got to meet you in the middle. They've got to have the right attitude, and they've got to try and dedicate themselves to it. And if they're not, there's an issue. Another piece of advice, again, this is incredibly basic, but people just don't do this enough. They have a review with people once a year. I have a review of people once a week. Every Monday morning I speak to the entire team, unless we're on holiday, and we sit down and we have a very quick debrief. And then I like to speak to at least my kind of managers once a day, even if it's 5 minutes, just a quick chat with them. I speak to most of my salespeople every day, again, even if it might be 2 minutes, just a quick phone call, what's happened. And you need that kind of update. So number one, communication. Number two, an annual review isn't enough. Like I say, those are almost daily reviews, but you need to take it to another step if you know there's a problem. And if you're not happy with their performance, you know there's a problem. And if you feel like shouting and threatening them, there's definitely a problem. In that case, what you need to do is bring them in and sit down and have an honest conversation with them. Whenever I've had problems with employees, I would say a third of the time I'll bring them in and have this conversation, and they will say they want to leave. And they leave. They get another job. They disappear. Another third of the time, they book their ideas up, which is great. Another third of the time, they don't, and then you've got to go down the disciplinary and do all of that. And obviously, consult with your HR lawyer. It's very important you do that properly. But like I say, 66% of problems can be solved simply by communication. You know there's a problem, and they'll often admit there's a problem. And it could be all sorts. It could be personal circumstances have changed. It could be they don't like the office, they want a new career, stuff's changed, whatever it happens to be. You're not a mind reader, but communicate with people. Like I say, I communicate with my key people for 5 minutes every day at least, and then I communicate with all the staff once a week, and I think that's really important. Most small business owners don't communicate with their staff enough. Now that's just me off the cuff in a quick webinar. If you're really struggling with this, we can probably have a conversation about this, and I do know people who can go into your organisation and can sort out your staff. I know people who will say they'll go in there and in 30 days they'll have everybody either singing on the same hymn sheet or out of the business. So if you need some more help, I can recommend people. These are just my brief kind of tips, if you will. But there are more professional approaches you can do. But your staff are there as a resource to you, and if they're not working, absolutely address it. And if it's got to this point now where you want to shout and threaten them, it's gone too far, and you need to look at what you're doing, and like I say, communicate very directly with them. Invest in them, but expect them to meet you in the middle. So that would be my advice on that one. We'll have a look at the next question. Okay, the next question says, you talk about increasing prices by at least 10%. Will I put off existing customers? We get this question almost every month. I talk about this strategy in one of the welcome packs we send you. So when you become a member or you become a client, you get these 5 videos, and this is one of them, where I often talk about pricing, and I say, people are nowhere near as price sensitive as you imagine. And I say, put your prices up. And I use that analogy about some people are price sensitive, other people aren't. And if I ask you what car do you drive, you probably won't drive the cheapest car around. You probably don't eat the cheapest food. You probably don't go to the cheapest bars. You probably don't drink the cheapest wine or beer or Coke or whatever. We don't all go for the cheapest. And I say, almost every business I've ever met isn't charging enough. So I advise them to increase it, and 10% is tiny. You're charging £500, so it goes to 550. but you'd be amazed what the results are. But almost every month we get questions like this saying, do I do it with my existing customers? Here's the kind of short answer, and if we work one-to-one together, I'd give you a better answer, and we devise a program where there is a way that you can increase prices over time, and you slowly launch it, and you give people notice. For a kind of off-the-cuff one in a webinar like this, I would say, have a rule that as of tonight, before you turn off your computer, you increase your price list by 10%, and stick to that for 30 days and see what happens. And I'll almost guarantee nothing bad will happen. You might lose the odd sale, but you'll make more and you've got greater revenue. And don't forget, 10% to your prices doesn't increase prices by 10%, because you'll probably be making a margin of, say, 20%. So it adds an extra 10% to that margin. Do you see how that works? So it's, it might increase your profitability by 50%, even though it's 10% over pricing. So it's well worth doing. Lose a few customers, but you've got more revenue to make up for the missed. So don't worry about that. So number one, that's what you do in that situation. So up your prices, see what happens for a month. Number two, with your existing customers, like I say, unless we're working together one-to-one and we come up with a great program, just ignore them for now. Just increase it with inflation, but just ignore them. Don't worry about it. Like I say, there are ways you can do it when you drill into more detail, and maybe we'll do future videos on it. Or like I say, if you work with me, we can address it. But just as a rule, so it's not an excuse, and I mean that politely, but sometimes I'm going to be challenging with people. Don't use it as an excuse, all my customers will walk away. Just don't worry about them for now. Change your prices, add 10%, which, like I say, will be worth a lot more to your profitability. And then at the next stage, measure it for a month. You should all be using conversion. We've been doing videos on this recently about conversion, and see if it affects your conversion. Like I say, the worst that will happen is that you lose a couple of sales, but you'll make up for it because you're making more money on the other sales. So just experiment with it. Like I say, I don't want to be rude or impertinent by saying it's a bit of an excuse, but sometimes it is, and changing a business is really difficult. I know this. Even though I tell people all day to change and innovate and do stuff differently, sometimes it's difficult for me personally to do it because it's a human emotion, and we're comfortable with the status quo. So I do appreciate that, and I know I'm being a bit challenging, but sometimes a bit of challenge, is healthy. So just put them up tonight before you turn off your computer and just see what happens. Okay, next question. This question says, I've heard different views. Is your website for information or for marketing? Again, this is a very common question. What you're referring to there, I guess, is it a brochure website, as I call it? A classic brochure website. You go on it, there's a slider on the home page. There might be a video, there's a bit of copy, and then there's about us and services and why we're different and galleries and portfolios and case studies and contact us, probably a blog. Or marketing, which is lead generation, and that's the really cheesy stuff where you've got red arrows, you've got data capture boxes, you've got big headlines saying, don't leave this page until you've applied for our special offer, 15% off, but it offer ends today. All of those kind of aggressive sales tactics, if you will. Well, with those type of tactics, they're very aggressive and they work, but they probably don't work for representing your brand in the best possible way. So we've got a conflict of interest, and that's the simple answer to this question. It's probably not the answer you want, but the simple answer is you've got a conflict of interest. On the one hand, you want to look professional, but on the other hand, you've got, like I say, red arrows and data capture boxes and aggressive headlines. The compromise is to have both. And the way you have both is you have an informational brochure website with about us and services and all the rest of it, and they're nice. However, you have what's known as landing pages. And whenever you run aggressive marketing campaigns, and by aggressive I just mean proactive, I just mean you're sending a direct mailer and giving them a web page to go to, or you're doing pay-per-click or SEO, or you are doing social media promotions or email-driven promotions, or whatever. You're doing something to drive traffic to a website page. Don't make that your home page. Don't make that one of your general pages. Make that what's known as a landing page. I like to call it a campaign page. And you can make that a lot more, I'll use American-style marketing, because a lot of people say it's Americanized, this kind of heavy sales, but it works. And I've got the split testing over so many campaigns to prove that it works. So what you do on that page, like I say, a big, nice, bold headline. You'll have a video. You'll have a data capture box. You'll probably have some arrows saying, apply here. You'll have a deadline. All of these kind of classic elements that you need. in any sales pitch, and have those as your campaign landing pages. So you've got your general website, so if I want to check you out because we have a meeting, or I get referred to you from one of my friends or associates or whatever, I check out your website, it looks like a nice, slick, professional corporate website. If that's your image, obviously. If you're a band, you want to look like a fun band, but assuming you're a professional business, that's what you want to look like. But on your campaign pages, when you're actually trying to sell something, and don't be afraid, if that's what you're trying to do, you're in business to sell something, whatever else you want to call yourself, whether you're a professional or you're a skilled person, or what, fundamentally you're selling something. So when you're selling something, you can't be too kind of picky about that. You've got to come out there and say bold headline, data capture, deadlines, and all of that kind of cheesy stuff that actually works. And we've done plenty of videos on how you write sales copy and how you differentiate those two web pages. So if you've not watched those, if you're a new member or whatever, I'll send those to you, and you'll see the difference between building a really nice brochure website and then actually having campaign pages. And I do that. If you check out some of my websites that I have, you'll see, or the ones we help people with, you will see that it's just a normal brochure website, probably not that exciting. There's probably an element of data capture and headlines, but nothing much. It looks professional. And then we have campaign pages, which are very aggressive. Right, okay, let me get the next question up. Okay, the next question says, is it true that you should spend 80% of your time on the headline? Yes. I don't know if you've got that statistic for me or somebody else. I don't know. But the simple answer is yes. I wouldn't say 80% as in sit there with your stopwatch, and if you've got 100 minutes to write a postcard or a letter or a website page or whatever, say, oh well, 80 minutes of this 100 have got to be on the headline. But a good headline is so important. They often say with advertising, it's a very classic phrase, is you need attention, interest, desire, and action. And the only way you get attention is a headline. Now, everything you ever produce in marketing, and that includes everything, and an email is marketing, a proposal is marketing, social media is marketing. Everything you do has to have a headline, even if your headline on social media is 2 words, as a bit of a teaser in quotes or whatever. You've got to have a headline. If you're doing stuff like advertisements, direct mailers, emails, all of that's got to have a headline. Whatever you're doing, a website page has to have a headline. So all good marketing starts with a headline for attention. No point having people's interest, desire, and action if you don't get their attention, because it'll never happen. So it's absolutely crucial. I'll give you a perspective. When I'm writing copy for people, I will probably write, let's say, 50 to 200 headlines. And I probably won't even write any of the body copy. I will probably dash out a couple of subheadings and a few other little phrases here and there that come to me. But I'll write 50 to 200 headlines. I'll save it, I'll close it, I'll come back to it 2 or 3 days later. And then when I go back to it 2 or 3 days later, I will start to reduce down the headlines. And some of them will become subheadlines. And then I'll start to merge headlines, and I'll have a short list that gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And I'll come to probably 6 or 8. And then I'll save it, and then I'll either speak to the client, or I'll use a focus group if it's a bigger campaign, or I'll speak to colleagues or whatever, and then we'll whittle down the best. And then the rest of it, like I say, I've probably got a bit of an outline of the different subheadings and that sort of stuff. The rest of the copy flows itself. I mean, if you follow the formula we've done before on how to write a sales piece, whether it's a letter, an email, or anything else, and the 10 laws of doing it, and the 10 sort of items you need to include, it's almost like a tick list. So once you've got the headline, everything else fills in. You've kind of got a skeleton. You're just putting on the beef on those bones. So don't sit there with a stopwatch. But the headline is just so important. And I'll easily spend probably 80%, give or take, of my time on the headline. If you talk about the 80-20 principle, it's definitely true of headlines. If it's not true of anything else, it's true of headlines. So yes, be spending most of your time on a headline. And if you're writing headlines, don't forget, email me them if you want to, and I'll have a look at them. All customers have our marketing critique service, so we'll look at the marketing you do and just send it over, and we'll give you some recommendations for improvement. And if you write 10 headlines, send them over to us, and we'll see if we can help them or select one that wins. Another something to remember, and I say this all the time, but I can't say it enough. You're writing a headline for your customers. That's the only person you're writing it for, not you. So don't ask people in the office, do they like it? Sometimes I write headlines that I absolutely hate, but I know the target market will like it. So just, always remember that. but dedicate most of your time to it and you won't go far wrong. Everything else flows from a good headline. Okay, the next question says, this is interesting, I seem to have missed the recession so far, but this year has been hard. Any advice? Okay, you might find it harder. Some people are finding this year's been harder than other years. If you're reliant on the public sector is going through a stage of cuts. A lot of government changes come in, in the first half of this year. So maybe you are finding it difficult. I'll be challenging and say I don't know if it's necessarily because of a recession. A lot of people say problems might be a recession, but it might or might not be a recession. But either way, if you're struggling, what do you need to do? Okay, there's only a couple of ways to grow a business. So if we look at each of them in turn and see what you can do in those couple of areas, you'll start to grow the business. So area number one is generating more inquiries. That's pretty obvious. Well, if you just look at the welcome pack we sent you when you joined as a customer, there's 20 strategies you can use. Or look at the DVD we produced recently, which was 20 strategies that won't even cost you a penny. And pick a couple of those and generate some more leads. So get more leads or inquiries into your business. That's the first way of growing a business. The second one is to improve conversion rates. Now, conversion rates mean when you have an inquiry, so somebody calls the office or goes on your website or whatever you're selling, somebody appears on your radar, if you will, and they make an inquiry, it's converting them. Now again, look at the stuff we've looked at in sales conversion. Look at the way to negotiate sales conversion. Simplest ways for sales conversion is a couple of laws that will probably double your conversion rates. Not very difficult to do, but number one, add a guarantee. So you're guaranteeing results. Number two, make sure you've mentioned at least 10 benefits. Number three, include social proof. Number four, have a question and answer of all the problems people have and solve them. So question is problem, then solution. Next, make sure that speed stuns. Make sure that you give them the proposal quickly and they get the information they want quickly, samples or whatever you're sending them. And then finally, and probably most crucially, follow up. You can't have a choice about follow up. I've worked with people and we've increased their sales just by increasing that follow up, because people send out proposals or send out emails or whatever and don't follow up. And if you do all of those things I've just mentioned, you'll probably massively increase your conversion rates. So you've generated more inquiries and then you've got more conversions. And like I say, we've got videos on all of those. The next one is to increase the value of spend. And that's quite simple. Just increase your prices. We talked about this before. If you don't want to do it with your customers, I accept that. That's fine. So don't do it with your customers. Just do it with your new inquiries as of today. So you've generated more inquiries, you're converting more of them, and you've increased the value of spend by adding that kind of extra pricing, 10%. I can guarantee you, people won't notice 10%. It's such a tiny amount. So in every £100, it's £10. It's just this product is £90 or is £99. What's the difference? So that's that element. The next one is the kind of regularity of spend. How regularly people are purchasing from you. A lot of businesses, particularly if you've been around for a while, because you said you've so far missed the recession, so from that I infer you're a fairly established business, you've got customers, and I'll almost guarantee your customers aren't buying from you often enough. Why not? Number one, you don't talk to them. So tomorrow, send them all an email, and then put them a flyer or a poster or a postcard or whatever in the post with some special offers, some February offers. Offer ends 28th of February. You've got 7 days to get that sorted. Send it tomorrow, first class, arrived, done. Telephone your top 10 customers and just say, what more can we be doing for you? 5 of them will say, everything's great, and you'll have built the relationship. The other 5 will say, everything's great, but oh, by the way, I was going to call you. We need X, Y, Z, whatever you sell. So, regularity. Introduce up and cross-sell products, so get people spending more. And finally, look at your cost base. Now, part of your cost base is obviously pricing. If you can increase pricing, brilliant. But you can also adjust for profit margins. And you adjust for profit margins by kind of cost controls, if you will. So go through the business and say, okay, I'm going to set a target of reducing expenditure by 10%. Negotiate with suppliers, cut loose. Lots of businesses get quite fat. They start having over-expensive services. So you kind of have a real examination of a business and look at different areas. And if you bring all of those together, kind of as simple as that sounds, you'll have a massive effect on the business. Because what have you done? You've got more inquiries, more people calling the office, emailing you, making inquiries online, buying stuff from your shop, all of that sort of stuff. You've improved your conversion rates. So for every 10 inquiries, instead of getting 2 customers, you're getting 3 or 4 customers. Doesn't sound much, but it adds up. Then you're getting your customers to spend 10% more. Then you're getting your customers to spend more often because you're being more aggressive with your special offers and your kind of customer marketing. And then you've looked at your cost base and you said, okay, I'm going to aim to reduce 10% spending across the board. Little steps in each of those, but if you combine that up, you'll have a real effect on your business. And how difficult was any of those? You know, we've already given you loads of information on how to do all of that in terms of all of your welcome pack, all the videos, all the DVDs we produce. Like I say, just on generating inquiries, we've probably got 50 videos at your disposal. Conversion, we've probably got 10. Up and cross-sell and pricing and costs, we've probably got 10 or 20. So you've got all of the resources, you just need to look at them, plan and implement. I know that sounds like I'm being a bit blasé about it, but I often find that action is the easiest way to solve something. If you're going to worry about something and not take action, you'll never solve the problem. But if you take action in the way that I've just done and say, right, I'm going to spend time on each of these areas and I'm going to take control of the situation, you'll get great results. The only way you'll solve a problem is action. It can either go right or wrong, but if you do all the best practice and you stack the odds in your favour, it's going to go right. Whereas if you just worry about it, which is people's temptation, because you get worried and you get a bit nervous and you don't want to spend, you don't want to invest, the problem's only going to get worse. So just focus in those areas and implement. Okay, the next question says, should I get designed Twitter and Facebook profile? This is when you, what they call pimping it. You make it look good because you have a nice header and all that sort of stuff. Okay, simple answer. Whenever people say, should I spend money in this? I always say, well, you can, but what's more important? So you've got a list of priorities. Twitter and Facebook, are they a priority for you? I always say you need at least 3 solid lead generators. Any business must be doing 3 lead generating activities that they're really, really, really good at. And that they do, someone's doing in the business every day. They're absolutely crucial. And every successful business must have those kind of, at least 3 of them that are a real mainstay. And if social media is one of your mainstay, and it could well be, it's one of the top 20 strategies, so it could well be, then yes, do it, because it will improve your brand, it will make you look more professional, and you'll probably be using social media to drive traffic to your website. So if your Twitter and Facebook look like your website, that helps and that improves, and it just improves your overall image. However, if it's a peripheral strategy for you, if it's not in your top 3 or whatever your kind of top list is, if it's just something you're doing but you're not that active with, well, put the money into your top 3. Where's it most needed? So it's not crucial, but it does help and it does look nice. And to be honest with you, the next time you get your website redesigned, I would just negotiate that in with the price. Because if you get to the end of a website negotiation and they say it's going to be 2,500, 3,500, 4,500, and you say I'd like some Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube profiles designed in with that, they'll probably say yes and take the money off you. So you got an opportunity when your website's being redesigned. Really, these days, I don't think you can look at redesigning a website. You're redesigning your website, and then you're looking at how that influences your emails, you're looking at how that influences your SEO and pay-per-click campaigns, your online advertisements, and how they look, your social media in terms of the YouTube, the LinkedIn, the Twitter, the Facebook, some of the more emerging ones. It's not really a website anymore, it's an online strategy. So it's good if they're all uniform, but it's not crucial. So whenever you're reviewing it again, get it done. But if it's not a top strategy, spend your money where it's needed. I've seen a lot of businesses waste money by £50 here, £50 there, and you can spend a few £1,000 budget that way. Okay, next question. My Yellow Pages is up for renewal. Is it worth it? Okay, you're saying Yellow Pages. I don't know if you mean Yellow Pages as in that big ugly directory, or not so big ugly directory, or yell.com. Either way, it doesn't matter. It's just a simple calculation. Look at your conversion tracker. And in your conversion tracker, see what sales you've made. Then times your sales by your profit margin. So if your profit margin is 20% and you've sold 100,000 through Yellow Pages, 100,000 times 20% is obviously 20,000. And then look at the price of Yellow Pages. If Yellow Pages is less than 20,000, keep doing it. If it's more than 20,000, well, don't. Unless you know that something else you could be doing is dramatically better, but often you don't. So basically, look at your conversion tracker, and if it's paying for itself, it's got the return on investment, keep doing it. If it doesn't, don't. As simple as that, really. Yellow Pages still works for some businesses, as does Yell. So it's not that it is an outdated medium, but then that doesn't really matter if it's working for you. Now, when I say that, don't say to me, I'm not tracking conversion. That's unacceptable. We've done some videos on this recently. We've given you templates. You've got no excuse. It takes 5 seconds. We personally receive multiple inquiries every day, and we still manage to put them all into a conversion tracker. So you've got no excuse. You absolutely have to profile it. So make sure you're tracking your conversion, and that's the only way you can know if this stuff is working. And if it's working, it's working. If it isn't, it isn't. I wouldn't worry about optimization. If you had pay-per-click and it wasn't working, I'd probably say let's look at optimizing it. But Yellow Pages, if it's not working, it's probably the medium. But that's my simplistic answer to you. This question says, I know I need to start doing some marketing. Where should I start? Okay, start with the question, who is my customer? And once you know who your customer is, and I'm going to say your customer will be a legal practice, for the sake of argument. So you want to target legal practices. I would say you've got 2 options. You can either go and find them, or they can come and find you. Now, the only way they can come and find you is if you're findable via search, because that's where people look. Might be the Yellow Pages, but it's much, much more likely to be online on the internet. So if people type in searches for your type of company, if these legal practices are typing in searches to try and find you, then brilliant. You need to be there. So that would be what? Well, that would be a good website, good social media, good email campaign, and then of course for traffic generators in terms of pay-per-click SEO, online advertising. So that's where you'd start. Or you can go and find them, and if it's legal practices you want to target, well, you know where they are, so you can reach them via email, you can reach them via direct mail, you can reach them via advertising, you can reach them via events, advertising events in the trade, so the lawyer magazine and lawyer events and networking where lawyers go to, or telephone. Or better still, a combination of all of them. And if you're really enterprising, you can use social media. Find them on LinkedIn and connect with them. Follow them on Twitter and see what they're saying. That kind of stuff, that kind of engagement. So where you need to start is, who is your customer? And then figure out, is your customer looking for you? In which case, be findable. Or are you going to go looking for your customer? Or you could do both. So that's where you start. Don't start by saying, should I be doing Twitter or direct mail or networking? Wrong question. The question is, who is my target market? Okay, it's solicitors, for the sake of argument. Okay, well, do solicitors search for me? Yes, they do, in which case, get all the online stuff sorted. If they don't bother. Just have a Brochure website that's just a presence. And then say, okay, they're not looking for me, so I'm going to go look for them. Well, where do they hang out? Wherever they go, you go. Well, they hang out in their office. And they hang out at events, and they hang out with other solicitors, and they XXXXX. You can see what happens. Like I say, where they're hanging out is where you need to hang out. So it's a simple calculation. So where you start is not with a marketing strategy. It's with who's the customers, where do they go, I'm going to go there. Quite simple. But, and I can't give you a more direct answer because I don't know what business you're talking about. But whoever your target market is, if they're looking for you, be findable. If they're, or if you want to go after them, figure out where they're going and go there. Okay, this next question says, I've heard you talk about remarketing. What is it? Okay, remarketing is something you can do through Google, through the online display network. And remarketing, for me, is actually something of a revolution. What remarketing is, as the name suggests, it means you get to remarket to people, specifically online. So in simple terms, and I won't bore you with the jargon, but in simple terms, someone goes onto your website. Because of a bit of code on your website, your Google AdWords campaign says, this person's been on my website. So everywhere they go on the internet, Google follows them, metaphorically. And it surfs up adverts to them when they go on one of any of Google's 1 million partner sites. And that 1 million partner sites might be joesmithlocalplumber.com, or it could be YouTube. Now, whenever you do this, it means you've got a second bite of the cherry, because when your customer has been on, or potential customer has been on your website, but then disappears, we know from statistics that over 90% of them will never make it, never engage with you, never make an inquiry or buy or anything. So we get to repitch at them. So I've looked at your website, I was interested, but the phone rang, so I answered the phone, then I had to go to a meeting, and I completely forgot about buying something from you. But then I go onto YouTube, and I type in funny cat video into YouTube, and then all of a sudden I see your advertisement, and it reminds me. So it's remarketing, and for me it's a revolution. It's incredibly cheap, and it's really effective, and more people should be doing it. It's really easy to set up. If you're struggling, speak to me. We'll help you. But it's very simple. But it's people might be spending a few £100s a month on pay-per-click, and this might cost another £20 a month. But if I said to you, do you want to spend £200 generating inquiries, but once they've been on your website, not to spend another £20 just marketing to them when they go around the internet. And there's other benefits as well, because if your advertisement appears on, say, YouTube or the Daily Mail website or a kind of popular football website or whatever, then it makes you look like a very big company. When you're not necessarily. Your advert's just being displayed to people who went on your website. So if you're interested in remarketing, get on with it. It's simple. If you've got a website, just do it, because people are visiting it. Keep pitching at them. Remarketing, as the name suggests. Okay, so now we're going to look at the questions that you have submitted live during this webinar. We've got about 7 here, which is you're quite quiet tonight, actually, which is good. Maybe I'm providing you with all the information you need. Let's read the first one. This one says, you recently did a video about selector base. What format do I get the selector base data in? Okay, selector base are a list broker. We actually did that just before Christmas, if memory serves me correctly. So you might be a few weeks behind, but it's brilliant that you're watching those, because that's a very important one. Selector Base is a list broker. There's lots of them out there. I just happen to recommend them because I use them. So I'll tell you to use for people that I think are the best. But obviously, find any list broker. You can Google list brokers. But essentially, they provide you with marketing data. So you give them criteria. So you say, I want to target women between 20 and 60 in County Durham or London or whatever, and they'll give you that list. Or you might say, I want to target manufacturing companies in Bristol with a certain turnover. They'll get you all of that data. So profiled marketing lists, that's what people like Selector Base and other list brokers give you. You've asked specifically what format do they arrive in. Basically, it's just a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet says their name and their salutation and their address, their position in the company. Or if it's a household, obviously there isn't, you'll just have their salutation. It will give you, like I say, name, address, postcode, telephone number if you're paying for telephone number, email address if you're paying for email address. It will give you any demographics you wanted to know. So if you wanted to know turnover or age or social group or whatever, it will give you all that information. So basically you get a database giving you all of the details to contact them, and then all of the demographics to inform your decision. Okay, this one's saying you've mentioned a product niche. It's a very long question. A product niche marriage, and what essentially you're saying, what does that mean? Okay, so previously I mentioned a product niche marriage. What does that mean? Well, I talk about this a lot. You've got a target market, whatever your type of business, and there's a group of within a demographic of those that really want your products or services, and they're the people who become your target market. So it might be that you're a consumer-facing business, and any business in the world, any consumer in the world would make a good customer. However, if you look at your customers, you'll probably find that it might be, like I said before, women between 20 and 60, in which case that becomes your target market. The kind of product niche marriage comes in that you need to design all of your products so they're perfectly aligned with that audience. So whenever you're writing your marketing copy, whenever you're writing your product summaries, whatever you're doing in your business, you need to align those two. So you know who your target market is, so write for your products for those people. So if it's women between 20 and 60, say, right, I'm imagining that's the person, and everything I write and everything I do in the business is going to be targeted at that people, because they're the people we want to attract. We won't turn anybody away, but that's the person who's buying. Your question is, who buys most of the time? Who's the buyer, and how do I put those two together? And that's all it is. It's simple as that. So that's product niche marriage. The next one says, basically you're saying that you send birthday cards to customers, and they're personalised, but should you get a corporate one? Okay, so I understand what you're saying. You send customers birthday cards, so you must be in an industry where you know people's dates of birth. So it's probably a professional business, and you're sending them personal cards, so you're getting them from Tesco or whatever, or the card shop. But you want to know if you could get corporate cards done. It's up to you. There's no right or wrong answer to that, and I've actually done both. I've had professional birthday cards produced, which I've used in the past, and I've also done personalised ones. Here's my suggestion. If you know customers well, and by well I mean if you speak to them more than a couple of times of the year, and you believe you know a bit about them, and you're quite friendly with them, send them a personalised card. not one with your logo on. If you don't speak to them very often, maybe once or twice a year, maybe you're in financial services or legal services and they see you every couple of years, then a corporate card might be better, because it's a bit funny to get a personalised card from somebody you don't know so well, whereas a corporate one will still achieve the objective and do it that way. There's some people that would passionately tell you it should be personalised, and others that say it should be corporate, but I would apply that common sense test. But I think it's great that you're sending birthday cards to your customers. That's fantastic, and keep doing that. That's really good. This one says you mentioned an 80-20. Did I? Okay. I don't know if that was today or previously, but it says you mentioned 80-20. How do I do that? Okay, we get asked this a lot actually. It's probably something I've mentioned in the past rather than on tonight's webinar. How do you do an 80-20 analysis? Simply get your customer list. So create a database or write it down on paper or whatever. Write your customers' names in one column and then their spend in another. Now, in reality, you should also then compute their profitability per spend. So a customer might be 10,000, but they might be a really unprofitable customer or a profitable customer. That's probably too complicated for now. Okay, but if you know how to do a profitability analysis per customer, do that. But if you don't, and most people don't worry about it for now. Just do it on turnover, that'll do. And basically write all of your customer income. So write down, let's say you've got 100 customers and you write down, well, this person spends £10,000, this person £50,000, this one £50, whatever. So essentially, you figure out the value of each customer. Now, you can do that on any criteria. You can do it on lifetime value, so how much they've spent. You can do it, and I would do this probably for most businesses, look what happened in 2012, and just base it on that. Or you could go back, 3 years or whatever. Essentially, you get your income from each customer. And then order it. And then what you're looking for is, and it almost always works out, that your kind of top 20%, so the top 20 of those 100 customers, will actually be giving you about 80% of your turnover. Or if it's profitability, your profits. Here I'm assuming profit follows turnover. It doesn't always, but for a simplistic analysis, just do it this way. So essentially, look at your top customers and you're looking to find which customers represent 80% of your turnover, and you'll find it'll be 20%-ish. I've done this with, I can't imagine how many businesses, and you'll almost always get an 80-20. It might be 15-85 or 25, but fundamentally it's a very small group giving you most of your business. That group represents your target market. So they're the people you profile, and they become your target market. They also become the people that you talk to, you build relationships with. They become your top customers. You send them those birthday cards we've talked about. You call them up regularly. You invite them out for dinner. You ask them referrals. You build relationships with them. They're your top customers, and you do whatever you can to keep them happy. That's that becomes your objective in life. And then you look at the other 80% and you decide how many of those can become top customers. So I call that like your B customers, if you will. If your top 20% is your A, they're your B customers, and they're the people who have the potential to become top customers. And then you might have the C ones who are not very good, and you can choose what to do with them. You could get rid of them. You could package them up and sell them. You could just service them but give it to a junior member of staff. Or you could say they don't spend very much, but they're still an okay customer, and that's fine. Do whatever you want with that group. But if they've not got the potential to become a top customer, we have to be mercenary at some point. There is a strategy that says treat every customer equally. There's another strategy that says service your top customers. And that's an ethical decision for you. And it depends what business you're in. If you're in a person-to-person business, a professional business, then obviously, your top people should be working with your top customers and accordingly. Whereas if it's a product business, it's probably just as easy to look after all your customers. It's just what becomes your target market. This one says, you mentioned Yellow Pages renewals, how much, I presume you mean how much does the Yellow Pages cost? That's a good question. It totally depends. If you speak to a rep, they'll give you a unique one. I'm not sure if you're talking to Yellow Pages as the directory or the Yell. Best thing to do is speak to them for a quote. Other something as well is don't believe them. I'm careful what I say for legal grounds here. I don't want Yellow Pages to come and sue me or whatever. But let me say this: I personally wouldn't accept the first price they gave me. I would look to reduce it, and I would expect that I could. So hopefully that's not too cryptic, but I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. But just speak to them because there's a different quote for everybody. But essentially, if you want a full colour advert or a black and white one, obviously there's a difference in price and what size you want. For one, something I would say is if you're going to do it properly. Get a decent sized advert that's colour. Do a reasonable attempt at it. If you are going to use it, don't buy a credit card black and white one. It's like, what's the point? It's never black and white because it's yellow, but black on yellow. Just don't bother. If you're going to do it properly. But like I say, speak to them, get a price, and then, as I say, I personally would hope to reduce that price. You mentioned pay-per-click. What should your budget be for that? Okay, well, general maxim is never spend more than you can afford to lose. I sometimes have people saying to me, oh, I'm going to buy a new website for £10,000, and they haven't got £10,000. Well, if you haven't got it, you can't afford to lose it. Marketing is not a gamble. It's a considered investment. So if you've got £200 in the bank at the end of the month after you've done everything, and you want to spend it on growth and pay-per-click's one of your primary strategies, spend that £200. But if you get to the end of the month and you're minus £200, well, you're going to have to economise somewhere to make that up. Don't go and get a bank loan out to grow your business. That's not the way it works. But like I say, if you get to the end of the month and there's £200, you can spend £200. If it's £2,000, well, depending on your business size, I mean, it's quite a general question, maybe allocate maybe £500. But I would start small. I'd probably start with £50 a week and build it up. But like I say, only spend what you can afford to lose, and that's pretty important advice. Never gamble with money because marketing's long term and it's predictable, but it has an element of variability within it. So you can kind of know what's going to happen over 6 months, but kind of in-campaign results can be inconsistent, and sometimes you need to build up an effect, and it happens towards the end of a campaign, on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 10th, or whatever, or with pay-per-click you've been piloting stuff and you've been split testing and you improve. So spend only what you can afford to lose. Never spend more than that. Never get into debt. Don't put it on a credit card. All of that sort of stuff. There's plenty of free marketing you can do. So I always say you've got to invest in your business. If you don't want to invest in your business isn't going to go anywhere. That's just factual. However, that doesn't mean you bankrupt yourself. You've got to be sensible. Start small and build up. Okay, final question. I'm experiencing cash flow troubles, and it's quite a long question, but you're basically saying cash is tight, like panic. Okay, well, yeah, panic. Yeah, that's a natural response, but I would say actually you need to probably calm down a little. I know it's difficult, but address the situation. Essentially, these short, medium, and long-term approaches to cash flow. And if it's short-term, the most important thing is act immediately. Most people bury their head in the sand. You can't afford to bury your head in your sand. So look at it directly. Basically, cash flow is quite simple. You've got money coming in, you've got money going out, and if at any point you're in deficit, over and above an overdraft, if you've got one, you're in trouble. So that's simply, if you run out of cash, you're in trouble. However, you can plan your cash flow. So the short term is to negotiate and sit down with people and try and agree payment plans. So who are your creditors? Now, most people's creditors with cash flow is HMRC. Well, call HMRC, speak to them, explain your situation, say that you want to apply under the time to pay agreement, and you want a payment plan, and make a proposal to them. Experience tells me with clients, sometimes they'll be a bit rough with you and they'll say, can you not, finance this or sell something? But if you explain it's a last resort, they'll generally agree. So you've got a payment plan. If you've got anything with a bank, they might not be quite so amenable, but sit down with them, plan with them, see if you can extend an overdraft or whatever. So you look at the way that you can do that. With your suppliers, negotiate with your suppliers. You'd be surprised how amenable your suppliers can be. If you say to your suppliers, I can't afford to pay you this month, but I'll pay you next month, but I guarantee I will pay you, people might accept that. They might say, well, I'll add a 5% interest charge, or you might get on with them and they say, fine, but they might ask you for a referral or something, So they might kind of have a bit of a tit for tat with you. Great, they might be able to give you 30 days, or even 14 days, or even 7 days can make a big difference. So, you've got to look at it in that fashion. So that's your suppliers. Then your customers, well, they're the people, probably, unless you've overspent, who are causing this. So negotiate with your customers. Make sure whenever accounts are becoming overdue, you start to negotiate with people. And we've done videos before on credit control, but you need to follow the credit control system. You need to get a payment date. You need to chase people. You need to be quite tough with people. You need to be fair, but you need to be firm. Don't let people get away with it, because something happens in business that if people get away without paying an invoice for much more than its overdue date, they start to do it all of the time, and they start to see you as the one invoice they can miss. Some companies who are struggling with cash flow have the invoices of people they need to pay and people they don't, because they're the people who chase. So he who shouts loudest gets paid. So it's important that you do that. So, short term, negotiate. Speak to HMRC, speak to the bank, speak to your suppliers, negotiate with customers, all of that sort of stuff. So speak to your creditors and debtors and sort that out. That's the short term. That's the lifesaver. Medium term is planning. Sit down with your accountant, sit down with your advisor, sit down with me if we're working together, whoever, and put together a cash flow plan. Most cash flow problems actually aren't cash flow problems. They're representative of something else. Might be a lack of sales, might be a overspend, might be the wrong timing of purchasing decisions. It might be that debtor days are too long or your creditor days are too short. Essentially, a lot of it's planning, and it's indicative of another problem. Pricing's too low, whatever. You're overstocked. There's all manner. There's a kind of multiplicity of factors. However, there's a reason why your cash flow is poor. I mean, if everything's perfect and your cash flow is poor, your business is going to fail because you've got less in the business than you need. So fundamentally, there's always a reason. So what you need to be doing is addressing those reasons and planning. Like I say, sit down with your trusted advisors and plan with them, and put together a cash flow plan over 12 months so you know what's happening, and identify and diagnose the underlying problems. The long term is to actually design a business model, and I've done this with several businesses, both personally and clients, where your business model is structured so that you avoid any cash flow problems, because your business model is about reoccurring fees, and fees which are collected by standing order, direct debit, or monthly payment or weekly payment or whatever, so that you essentially won't arrive in any problems. I often talk about what I call the light switch cost. Now, the light switch cost is, what does it cost every month to run your business? Obviously, expenditure in some months is higher than other months, like when you've got VAT or corporation tax due, or if you've got rent quarterly or all that kind of stuff. But basically, figure out how much it costs to run the business on average every month. And I'm going to say, let's imagine it's 20,000, just for the sake of argument. You need to design your business model so that you've got £20,000 coming in automatically each month. Now, on standing order and direct debit or immediate payment, that's kind of what you want. And I've done this before in the past with some businesses where they've told me it's just impossible. Some industries have said it just doesn't happen in this industry. Bad debtor days is just a problem with this industry. And we've designed a business model in the long term. I'm not talking about tomorrow, I'm talking about long term, where we build a business model so that if it costs 20 grand to run the business, 20 grand comes in on direct debit or standing order every month, so you've got no cash flow problems. You eliminate that potential. Yes, you'll always have a failure rate on standing order, but it varies from industry to industry, but it tends to be 3, 4, 5%. So it's hardly anything. So basically, you know that you're going to get what you're planning to get. So long-term, structure a business in that way. So hopefully that helps. I'll find out from the moderator who asked that question. I'll give you a phone call to give you a more personalised bit of help as well. I know cash flow can be very scary, but face up to it and start to negotiate and do something about it. Almost all cash flow problems can be overcome by planning and action. So make sure you do that. Okay, so we will be next running another webinar in a month's time. So between now and then, I hope you have a fantastic time in business. Best wishes to you. So take care now, and I'll speak to you in a month's time. Goodbye.